Somewhere between 100 and 10,000 species go extinct every year, most of them without making a ripple on our radar. Even more alarming are the species still hanging on right on the edge of disappearing forever. These are the species that we have a last-minute chance to protect. But to do that, people first need to know that they exist. In this video, we're looking at 10 of the rarest species of plant, animal, and fungus in the world. Species that are still with us, but maybe not for long. This is part 5 in my series on the rarest species on Earth. So, if the species you hope to hear about isn't on this list, it may be in one of my other videos on this topic, so make sure you check them out. The Javan green magpie is a strikingly beautiful bird found only on the island of Java, Indonesia. It belongs to the crow family, Corvidae, and stands out with its vivid green and chestnut plumage, black mask, and orange bill and legs. Interestingly, these birds are naturally a dull turquoise blue, but just as flamingos turn pink thanks to their diet, yellow carotenoids in the food that they eat mixes with the blue in their feathers to turn them bright green. It's thanks to this vivid appearance that the Javan green magpie is one of the most endangered species in the world. Java is one of Earth's most populous islands, being home to about 157 million people in an area about the size of the US state of Arkansas. In the last 75 years, the island has lost nearly 65% of its forests. While habitat loss is a major threat to the Javan green magpie, it isn't the main threat. Indonesia has a serious obsession with keeping caged birds. Any bird with a nice song or bright plumage is at risk of being trapped and caged. Many people in Indonesia associate keeping rare birds with status and wealth, and they regularly participate in birdsong competitions. But this hobby has led to Indonesia having one of the highest rates of endangered bird species of any country in the world. The Javan green magpie's appearance has made it a prized target for collectors and bird traders, to the point that now the species is almost entirely dependent on captive breeding programs for survival. Their wild range has become limited to a few national parks in West Java, but living in a protected area means nothing. Bird trappers frequent the parks in search of the birds, knowing that they'll fetch the highest price. As a result, current population estimates are grim. Surveys have failed to confirm a stable wild population in recent years, and experts estimate that if any individuals remain in the wild, they number fewer than 50. The global captive population is also tiny, being only about 50 birds itself. Conservation efforts led by organizations like the Cikananga Conservation Breeding Center in Java are focused on captive breeding, habitat restoration, and public education to eventually reintroduce the species into the wild. But without a social change in the country against the trapping and keeping of endangered birds, any reintroduction effort will be in vain. The Gobi Bear, or Mazalai as it's known in Mongolia, is one of the rarest bears in the world, and perhaps the toughest. It lives in the brutally harsh conditions of the Gobi Desert, where temperatures can swing from negative 40 degrees Celsius in winter to over 40 degrees Celsius in summer, and water is scarce year-round. But this brown bear subspecies has adapted to survive in extremes. It's the only bear that lives exclusively in a desert ecosystem, having evolved to be smaller, lighter colored, and slimmer than other brown bear subspecies. The Gobi bear has no history of conflict with humans. It's shy, elusive, and extremely difficult to spot, spending most of its time in the most remote corners of the desert, near sparse oases. Its diet consists mostly of roots, wild rhubarb, berries, and the occasional rodent, meaning it survives without ever needing to hunt large prey. Despite its adaptations, the bear remains extremely vulnerable to climate change, drought, and habitat degradation, particularly as mining and development creep closer to its fragile territory. They're found in an area of over 23,000 square kilometers, but their population is restricted by resource availability. They need to live in close proximity to water resources, and competition for food is high. To make matters worse, their sex ratios are skewed towards males, meaning that there are fewer females available to produce offspring. In the 1950s, Mongolia imposed a total ban on Gobi bear hunting in order to protect them, and since 1985, a conservation program has been in place whereby the bears receive supplemental feeding from conservationists. There are no Gobi bears in captivity anywhere in the world, and no confirmed individuals outside of Mongolia's Great Gobi strictly protected area, meaning that if this population disappears, the subspecies will go extinct. It's estimated that there are currently somewhere between 30 and 50 Gobi bears surviving in the wilds of Mongolia, making them among the most endangered mammals in the world. The bear's genetic diversity is worryingly low, and its isolation leaves it with few lifelines. Efforts are ongoing to understand how to save this bear without removing it from the wild, because with no captive population, there is no second chance. One of the rarest and least understood fungi in the world is the willow blister fungus. It was first described in the 19th century from specimens collected on dead willow branches in the UK, and since then it has remained relatively unstudied. The fungus forms small, black, blister-like fruiting bodies on decaying wood, but it's rarely seen. For over a century, it was known only from herbarium specimens, and for a long time it was thought to have already gone extinct. Its disappearance was largely attributed to changes in land use, forestry practices, and river management that affected its preferred habitat, riparian zones with decaying willow wood. Willows are often cleared from riverbanks to manage flooding or make way for agriculture and development, and the resulting habitat loss and fragmentation likely reduce the availability of suitable substrate for the fungus to grow on and fruit. Then in 2005, it was unexpectedly rediscovered in a small patch of woodland in Perthshire, England. A follow-up survey confirmed its presence on decaying willow in a few more locations in Scotland, but it remains incredibly rare. As of now, it has only ever been found in a handful of sites in the UK. Its known range remains tiny, and population data is virtually non-existent. Like many fungi, it could be that it's more widespread than we realize, but overlooked, especially given its discrete appearance and the fact that fungal surveys are infrequent and often underfunded. Still, the absence of records over such a long period suggests that it persists in very low numbers. Even without a formal population estimate for the willow blister fungus, it's still listed as critically endangered in the UK. Conservation of the species is difficult due to how little is known about its ecology, but its rediscovery has sparked renewed interest in fungi conservation more broadly, a field that has long lagged behind the protection of plants and animals. Its best hope for survival lies in preserving the natural willow-dominated woodland habitats it depends on, and encouraging more mycological surveys that might reveal whether the species is truly as rare as it appears, or just exceptionally good at hiding. The blue-eyed ground dove is a bird so elusive that for over 70 years it was assumed to be extinct. This small, cinnamon-colored dove with brilliant sky blue eyes and distinctive blue spots on its wings was known only from a handful of specimens collected in the 19th century. That was until 2015, when against all odds, it was rediscovered in the grasslands of Minas Gerais, Brazil. The following year, the first ever photos were taken of the species. The rediscovery sent shockwaves through the birding and conservation communities. A bird presumed lost forever was suddenly alive again, hiding in plain sight. But the excitement of its rediscovery was short-lived. The blue-eyed ground dove isn't just rare, it's critically endangered. At the time of its rediscovery, only about 27 birds were known to be surviving. The species is found in one of the most endangered ecosystems in the world, the Brazilian Cerrado. This tropical savanna is often overshadowed by the nearby Amazon rainforest in terms of global attention, but it's a hotspot of biodiversity in its own right. Unfortunately, more than 50% of the Cerrado has been destroyed for agriculture, cattle grazing, and urban development. The dove requires a specific type of grassland, open with native species interspersed with shrubs and termite mounds. And this habitat is very rare, and it's disappearing fast. Compounding the problem is fire. The Cerrado evolved with periodic, low-intensity natural fires, but modern land use practices have introduced frequent and uncontrolled burns that wipe out patches of habitat before they can regenerate. With such a tiny population confined to such a narrow strip of land, a single fire could wipe out the species entirely. Conservationists are now racing to protect what's left of its habitat, and efforts are underway to establish a protected area. But with so few wild birds left and such specific habitat needs, the margin for error is razor thin. But there's still a sliver of hope. In 2023, the first captive blue-eyed ground dove chicks were successfully reared, giving hope that a captive breeding program could help bring the species back. But it may be too little too late. If swift and decisive action isn't taken to protect the species and its habitat, this bird may disappear again, and this time for good. Santa Catarina's guinea pig is one of the rarest mammals in the world, and one of the most geographically restricted. This small rodent is found nowhere but Moleques do Sul, a group of tiny rocky islands off the coast of southern Brazil. In fact, the entire species is confined to a single island less than 10 hectares in size. That's smaller than many city parks. For a terrestrial mammal, that's an incredibly tiny range. Scientifically described only in 1999, the Santa Catarina's guinea pig is closely related to the common guinea pig, resembling its well-known relative in most ways. It's herbivorous, diurnal, and social, living in small groups that forage among the island's sparse vegetation. But its environment is what sets it apart. Moleques do Sul is harsh, windswept, exposed, and with limited freshwater sources. The guinea pigs here have adapted to survive on moisture from the plants that they eat and the occasional rainfall that pools in rock crevices. Their population is also incredibly small. Surveys suggest that there may only be between 40 and 60 individuals left, making it one of the most critically endangered rodents on Earth. With such a small and isolated population, the species faces constant threats from inbreeding, genetic drift, and stochastic events. A single severe storm, disease outbreak, or human disturbance could wipe them out entirely. Fortunately, their island home lies within the Serra do Tabuleiro State Park, and landing on the island is prohibited without a permit. This legal protection offers some measure of safety from human interference. There are no invasive predators or competitors on the island, at least for now, but the risk remains. Rats, cats, or even diseases carried by human visitors could devastate the population if introduced. Without careful monitoring and continued protection of its tiny island habitat, Santa Catarina's guinea pig could disappear before most people even learn that it exists. The Putuo Hornbeam is a species so rare it almost doesn't exist at all. It's a small, unassuming tree native to a single island off the eastern coast of China, Putuo Mountain, an important site for Buddhist pilgrimage. The tree was discovered near Huiji Temple and described in 1932, but since its discovery, no other specimen has been found. In fact, for nearly a century, the population of this tree has stood at 1, making it among the rarest species on Earth. Standing at about 10 meters tall, the lone Putuo Hornbeam is nestled in a patch of secondary forest and remains stubbornly alive despite decades of solitude. It flowers, it fruits, and it produces seeds, but none have successfully germinated in the wild. The reasons aren't entirely clear. Some suspect inbreeding depression, others point to poor seed viability, poor pollen quality, and subtle changes in the microclimate that make it difficult for seedlings to take root. Whatever the cause, this tree has been in a state of slow motion extinction for decades, suspended on the edge of vanishing. In fact, conservation biologists refer to it as a living dead species, still with us, but almost as good as gone. Mount Putuo has seen intense development in recent decades to accommodate tourism and religious visitors, and much of the original forest cover has been lost or altered. The Putuo Hornbeam wasn't driven to rarity overnight by catastrophe. It simply faded, overlooked and unprotected, until it was almost gone. In fact, most extinctions are like this. Less charismatic species like insects, plants, and fungi often disappear without anyone noticing. Thankfully for this species, in the year 2000, botanists collected seeds and cuttings and began to cultivate a population of the trees in botanical gardens in China. Over 10,000 trees have been successfully cultivated this way. But with such a limited genetic pool, restoring a healthy population is still a long shot. So still, that one wild tree stands, weathered, persistent, and profoundly alone. The Tamaraw is a small, stocky wild buffalo found only on the Philippine island of Mindoro, and it's vanishing fast. Unlike its more famous cousin, the water buffalo, the Tamaraw is a solitary and elusive animal adapted to the dense tropical forests and grasslands of the island's rugged interior. Standing just over a meter tall at the shoulder, with short V-shaped horns and dark brown fur, it has a compact, muscular figure and is also known as the Mindoro dwarf buffalo. For centuries, it thrived across the island and possibly on neighboring Luzon, but today it's confined to a few isolated patches of habitat exclusively on the island of Mindoro. The Tamaraw's decline began in the early 20th century. When settlers from other islands began moving to Mindoro, they brought with them cattle, agriculture, and disease. Rinderpest, a viral disease introduced by domestic livestock, swept through the island and decimated the Tamaraw population. At the same time, forests were cleared for farming and human settlements, cutting the species off from much of its range. Hunting also took a toll. Though now illegal, the Tamaraw was once hunted both for food and as a symbol of prestige, further pushing it towards extinction. Unlike many large animals, the Tamaraw is not a species well adapted to living alongside people. It's shy, territorial, and requires thick cover to feel secure. This has made it particularly vulnerable, as Mindoro's human population grows and expands into the few remaining wild areas. Roads, cattle ranches, and slash-and-burn farming practices continue to fragment the forest, separating Tamaraw populations and making breeding more difficult. In some areas, interbreeding with feral water buffalo poses a new threat, risking the loss of the species' genetic distinctiveness. Conservation efforts have helped slow the decline. The Tamaraw has been protected by law since 1979, and the establishment of Mount Iglitbaco Natural Park has created a safe haven for a small core population. In recent years, the Tamaraw Conservation Program, run by the Philippine government, has implemented patrols to prevent poaching, conducted health checks, and monitored population trends. There are even efforts underway to translocate individuals to other suitable habitats within Mindoro to spread out the population and reduce the risk of a single disaster wiping out the species. Still, few remain. The most recent population surveys suggest that there could be as few as 220 individuals left, most of them living within or near Mount Iglitbaco. The Tamaraw's future hinges on habitat protection, careful management, and strong collaboration with local communities, many of whom now play an active role in guarding the species from extinction. Pupu Kuahiwi, also known as the Oahu tree snail, is so rare it no longer exists in the wild as far as we know. Native to the island of Oahu in Hawaii, this tree snail was once part of a spectacularly diverse group known as the Hawaiian land snails, or kahuli in Hawaiian. These snails were celebrated in traditional songs and chants for the beautiful melodic sounds they were said to make as they fed or moved among the leaves. Pupu Kuahiwi lived in the native forests of the Ko'olau Mountains, clinging to the underside of the leaves and slowly grazing on microscopic fungi. Its shell was glossy and eye-catching, with bright golden yellow bands that gave it its scientific name, fulgens, meaning shining in Latin. But that shine has nearly been extinguished. Like nearly all of Hawaii's native land snails, Pupu Kuahiwi was pushed towards extinction by a perfect storm of threats. The most devastating came in the form of invasive species, particularly the rosy wolf snail, introduced in the 1950s in a misguided attempt to control other invasive snail species. The wolf snail turned out to be a voracious predator of the native snails, hunting them by scent and wiping out entire populations in short order. Rats and Jackson's chameleons have also played a role in predation, while habitat loss and climate change have further chipped away at the snail's already limited range. In 2014, there were only 2 specimens of Pupu Kuahiwi held in captivity, and only one known wild population still existed in the southern Ko'olau range of Oahu. Sadly, in 2016, a landslide hit the area that the last wild snails were living in. Conservationists rushed in to save as many of the snails as they could, but they could only find 6. These were taken into captivity, and a breeding program was started. With the mudslide, the species is believed to have gone extinct in the wild. As of 2022, the captive population was up to 50 snails, and there are hopes that when the population gets to above 100, reintroductions to special predator-proof enclosures will help re-establish them in the wild. It's also hoped that a few individuals may survive in remote, unsurveyed pockets of forest, but no confirmed sightings have been made recently. Over 750 species of land snail once existed in Hawaii, but the vast majority of them are now gone. The European owl moth is one of the largest and most striking moths in Europe, and also one of the rarest. Endemic to southern Italy, this nocturnal moth belongs to the ancient family Brahmaeidae, which is more commonly found in Asia. In fact, this species is the only European representative of this otherwise tropical family, making it unique in the continent. The moth was scientifically described in 1963, with a wingspan of up to 16 centimeters and dark, patterned wings that resemble an owl's plumage. It's unmistakable when seen. The adult moths are active only briefly, emerging in late spring and flying for just a few weeks, mostly at night. During the day, they rest motionless on tree trunks, perfectly camouflaged. The species is extremely habitat specific. It's confined to a few isolated valleys in the Apennine Mountains of southern Italy, where it depends on undisturbed deciduous forest and reliable presence of its larval host plants, particularly species of ash. In fact, its range is so limited that it may occupy less than a few dozen square kilometers in total, which is a striking level of endemism for a flying insect. The European owl moth also doesn't appear to disperse far, meaning each population is largely isolated, making recolonization of lost habitat unlikely and increasing the risk of local extinction. Due to its narrow distribution and the ongoing threats to its habitat, it's listed as endangered by the IUCN. Logging, agricultural expansion, road building, and forest fragmentation all put pressure on the remaining populations. There is currently no captive breeding program for the species, and most of what we know comes from a handful of entomologists and naturalists working in its limited range. Continued protection of its native forests, especially the ash-rich woodlands of Calabria, is essential for its survival. As with many rare invertebrates, its fate will likely depend on how much value people are willing to place on preserving even the small, less visible species that help sustain entire ecosystems. The red wolf is one of the rarest canids in the world, and also one of the most controversial. Native to the southeastern United States, it once roamed from Texas to the Atlantic coast, through forests, swamps, and coastal prairies. Smaller than a gray wolf, but larger than a coyote, the red wolf has a distinctive reddish coat, a narrow muzzle, and is extremely elusive in the wild. By the 1970s, due to aggressive predator control programs, habitat loss, and widespread interbreeding with coyotes, the red wolf was declared extinct in the wild. But it wasn't gone entirely. A small number of red wolves, just 14 individuals, were captured before extinction took hold and became the foundation for a captive breeding program. In 1987, the species became the first carnivore to be reintroduced into the wild in the United States, with a population established in North Carolina's Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge. For a while, it seemed like a rare conservation win. The population grew to over 100 individuals by the mid-2000s, but then things began to unravel. Political pushback, poaching, mismanagement, and the ever-present threat of hybridization with coyotes caused numbers to plummet. Today, the number of truly wild red wolves is likely fewer than 20, all of them in eastern North Carolina. The captive population, spread across several institutions, holds a few hundred more, but the prospects for reestablishing them in the wild remain uncertain. Adding to the species' fragility is the debate over whether it's a valid species at all. Some researchers argue that the red wolf is actually a hybrid, a relatively recent mix of gray wolf and coyote. Genetic studies have shown high levels of coyote ancestry, leading some to question whether the red wolf even existed as a unique lineage. Others contend that the red wolf is a distinct evolutionary lineage that predates European colonization, and that hybridization only intensified after humans decimated wolf populations and fragmented their habitats. In 2019, a landmark study suggested that red wolves may in fact be a unique species with ancient roots, sharing ancestry with an extinct southeastern wolf population, but their status remains disputed. This question of legitimacy has serious implications for conservation. If the red wolf is dismissed as a hybrid, protections under the U.S. Endangered Species Act could be weakened or even removed. But to many conservationists, that misses the point. Whether species or hybrid, the red wolf represents the last wild wolf of the American South, a predator that once helped shape an entire ecosystem. For now, the survival of the red wolf hangs on by a thread. Conservation groups are fighting in courtrooms and on the ground to secure more land, reduce human conflict, and curb coyote hybridization, with the hopes that one day soon, this apex predator of the American South will make a comeback. And that's it for today's video. I actually got most of these species by reading the comments that you guys left on my other videos about rare species. So if there's a rare plant, animal, or fungus that you want to see covered in a future rare animals video, make sure you let me know about it in the comments below. I also need to apologize for my voice. I am just getting over a flu and my voice hasn't recovered yet, so this is what it is. I'm sorry. As always, I need to say a special thanks to my patrons. Without their ongoing support, I wouldn't be able to make a video like this every week. If you want to support the channel, consider joining us on Patreon. The link is in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and make sure you watch the other videos I made on this topic by clicking the thumbnail on the screen now.